What Mum told me was worrying, to say the least. Grandad had consumption in his lungs. He had a fever too, and other strange symptoms that doctors thought were malaria. Malaria? I didn't understand. How could you get malaria in North London? He got it years ago on his travels, a flare-up of an old illness, the doctor said. And what with his lungs, Mum started to cry quietly, miserably. Made me teary too. I hated it when she got upset. Mostly it was over much smaller things than this. The stuff a smile or a pat on the arm would make better, but this was serious and called for tea. I gave Mum hers with extra sugar, which usually did the trick when she was low. How will you ever pay for the hospital? Mum sighed, teacup in hand. Dad stared brutally at the fire. We can hardly manage our own bills, love. Don't ask me to start helping your father now. Revived a bit, Mum then started fretting over me. You're not to visit him, Lil. I'm warning you, he's infectious. And Dad chipped in with, she'll be at school, not hanging around hospital wards. So I nodded and tried to look sensible, though my mind was already made up. I was going to see him tomorrow, and they couldn't stop me. I stayed tight-lipped about the strange business with the parcel too. Mum already had enough to worry about, and Dad, a stickler for doing things properly, would probably make me take it to the police. That night I couldn't sleep for toffee. Worrying about Grandad was bad enough, but I'd not counted on the jar disturbing me like it did. I'd left the box on my chair, but every time I nearly nodded off, my eyes would ping open and I'd find myself staring at it again. Eventually I put the light on. Then my mind started playing tricks. Was the parcel moving? What was that rustling sound? Was the package unwrapping itself? It was stupid thinking like this, but in the end I only felt better once the parcel was out of sight under my bed. My room became familiar again too. The chair heaped with clothes, a rug on the bare floor, thin curtains at the windows that always let a draught in. We could make it look nicer, couldn't we, eh? Mum said when we first came to live here. A bit of lace, a few dried flowers. I pulled a face and she sighed. Oh, Lil, you're so plain and practical. Sometimes I think you'd rather have been born a boy. Actually, she had a point. Yet as soon as she'd said it, she kissed the top of my head and insisted she didn't mean it. Even now, the only decoration was on the wall above my bed, where I'd stuck a postcard Grandad bought me on our last visit to the British Museum. It was of the Rosetta Stone, a big grey slab covered in ancient writing that meant the rest of the world can translate hieroglyphics. Turning out my bedside lamp, I hoped I'd finally go to sleep, but instead the darkness swirled with ancient symbols. When I tried to think of something else, I kept coming back to Egypt. Only this time it was today's other news story, the one about Howard Carter and Tutankhamun's tomb. Despite what Grandad thought of Mr. Carter, people were fascinated by the story. There was something about it, a brave explorer searching for unknown treasures that captured the imagination like a good old-fashioned adventure tale, the sort Dad would have read as a boy. I devoured myself too sometimes, when my Latin homework got too dull. For years, archaeologists had been digging in the place they called the Valley of the Kings. They discovered plenty of royal tombs, those of Thutmose and Ramesses II being two of the famous ones, yet no one had ever found the pharaoh Tutankhamun. They'd given up looking, all except for one man, Howard Carter. Obsessed with the missing tomb, he was back in Egypt for one last search. Dad said the story captured people's hearts because Tutankhamun had died young, which made us think of all our soldiers whose war graves were lost. I reckoned it had just as much to do with the treasure, because we knew how the Egyptians buried their kings with loads of gold. It was a hopeful story too, in a way that the other one about human feet definitely wasn't. The worst news of all, though, was Grandad's. The business with his lungs I'd perhaps seen coming, but malaria? I didn't know you could get that again once you'd had it. Funny how something from all those years ago had come back to make trouble now.